Hey everybody, Steve Spohn here with Spohn Performance, and we're going to give you a video tour of our tubular front end for the 1982 to 1992 GM F-body Camaro and Firebird. What we have here is a display setup that shows all the different options we offer on the tubular K-member, tubular A-arms, and we also have our Pinto manual rack kit installed as well. We're going to give you a video tour here and show you all the details of each of these components. As you'll see, we also have the factory spindles mounted in place. They're powder coated black. It's just to give you an idea of what everything looks like when it's all together in the car. On this display setup, the driver's side is a coilover version and the passenger side is a stock type spring setup. Stock type spring would be factory springs, lowering springs, any kind of spring that mounts factory location. So we'll start here on the passenger side, which is a stock type spring setup. And as you can see, we have the upper spring mount on the K-member. That is all welded in place. It's not an additional bolt-in piece like a lot of our competitors use, so it's a much stronger setup. On the A-arm, we have a spring box, which makes the A-arm much more rigid. We also have a stepped spring seat so that the bottom of your coil spring has full contact. Again, that's another thing a lot of our competitors skimp on. We're showing you all the different mounting options we have on the A-arms on this display setup as well. You can see on this end we have Delrin Bushings. Delrin is a rock hard plastic. Gives you a bushing with pretty much zero deflection. It's a great road race setup. And on the other end of the A-arm we have our standard polyurethane bushings, which of course is a good setup for a street driven car. If it's a daily driver, sees a lot of street, most of our customers go with the polyurethane bushings for that. You can see our A-arms do have the front sway bar end link mount. They're welded on there. And we're using our Spohn CNC machine precision ball joints. Ball joint specs are the same as OEM. A lot of people ask us that. If for some reason you ever did have to replace the ball joints, yes, you could use the same ball joints that you would use on your factory A-arms. And of course you can see we have the factory spindle connected on there as well. I'll just give you a little tour here so you can look around the A-arm. That's your rear mount. Everything is CNC laser cut and CNC formed on a 5-axis CNC press brake. That ensures, very close tolerances. Makes for a very nice fit when you go to install this. Our A-arm box mounting, I should say our A-arm mounts, as you can see, are fully boxed. Gives you maximum rigidity on your A-arm mounts. Trying to get close up here so you can see the quality of the welds. We have very talented welders working here. All these welds are show quality. One other thing I wanted to go over on this tour is the motor mount pads. That's what you're looking at here. This one in particular will mount a small block Chevy, big block Chevy, or an LT1. We also have versions available for an LSX swap and for the 3.8 liter V6, which would be the V6 like it was in a turbo Trans Am. If you are using block mounted motor mounts, whether it's rubber bushings, poly bushings, or solid motor mounts, you need the motor mount pads. That is what the block mounted motor mount bolts to on the K-member. These 4 holes, that's where your motor mount bolts to. We offer the K-member with no motor mount pads because a lot of our hardcore drag customers are running a motor plate and they don't use any block mounted motor mounts, so they want to keep the pads off there just for additional weight savings. So hopefully that clears that up. We get a lot of questions about that. We'll go over here to the driver's side. This is the coilover version. You can see on the top of the K-member we have eliminated the spring seat. Just gives you a little bit more additional weight savings if you're running the coilover. Gives a little cleaner look. These are the coilover version A-arms. As you can see, we have eliminated the spring seat. The coilover, you don't need it, so it's a nice weight savings. And on this A-arm, I'm showing you the Delsphere pivot joint on this end. If you watch our Delsphere video, you can get all the details on that. It's basically a streetable spherical setup. It's like a spherical rod end, but the ball rides in Delrin Bushings, so it's nice and quiet. It's also adjustable and rebuildable. And on this end, we have a spherical rod end setup. Great hardcore road race setup. It's what most of our hardcore road race customers run, the spherical rod end. Again, we have our end link mounting tab and our precision ball joints. They are included with the A-arms. We have our locating pin welded in place. So that gives you a good overview of the different types of A-arms and the different K-member setups. One thing I want to point out, it doesn't matter if you're running a coilover A-arm or a stock type spring A-arm. All four mounting options are available either way. You can get the poly bushings, Delrin bushings, the Delsphere pivot joint, or the spherical rod end on any of our A-arms, coilover or stock type spring. Another feature that we want to point out on our K-members that most, if not all, of our competitors skimp on is the brake line mounting tabs. Our tubular K-member includes all the mounts to mount your brake lines just like you did on the factory K-member. You can see here we're on the driver's side, top mount. Wouldn't matter if you have a coilover like we're showing here or the stock style spring setup. The factory brake line mounting tab is in place. Same thing here on the driver's side. AR mount tube. That is a factory brake line mounting tab there. And on the motor mount pads, on the passenger side and the driver's side, those are your brake line mounting tabs. We also include new hardware with the K-member for all your brake line tab mounts, so you don't have to use your factory stuff. We include all new for that. Same thing with the mounting hardware for the K-member itself. All 6 bolts we include. The factory bolts would be too long, so all the mounting hardware for the K-member itself is included with the K-member. On the A-arms, you can reuse your factory mounting hardware, or we do have a new bolt kit, part number 980. It gives you all 4 bolts to do both of your A-arms. On the rack kit, all the mounting hardware is included. Everything you're seeing here that shows the rack bolted in place, that's all included with the rack kit. If you get the rack kit, that all comes with. Okay, we'll move on to our Pinto manual rack kit. One thing I want to point out is we're using a brand new Pinto manual rack. It's not a remanufactured unit. It's all new. If you're running a Pinto rack kit on a K-member, you will need the rack mounts welded in place. So if you're going to run a rack kit, you need to order the K-member set up for the rack kit at the same time. If you already have one of our K members that was set up for stock type steering, we do have a rack kit available that gives you these mounts. You would have to weld them onto the K member yourself. One other thing I wanted to note is, I'm sure some people ask me, Steve, can I get the K member set up for the rack and then add the rack at a later date? And the answer is unfortunately no, because the stock type steering will run right into these rack mounts. So if you get the K member set up with the manual rack mounts, you will have to have the rack in place also. On the passenger side, the rack mounts with a rack clamp. We make these in-house. They're CNC machined out of 6061 aluminum. It's a very sturdy setup. The driver's side, you use the mount that's cast into the Pinto rack. It bolts directly to the mounts that are welded onto the K member. We're using 4140 chrome moly adjusters. They're silver zinc plated. And then we also include a bump steer kit, which is what you're looking at now. That's a 5/8 inch XM series Teflon impregnated race chrome moly rod end. Very strong, very quiet. Gives you the articulation that you need. Then we use a 4140 chrome moly CNC machine spindle to tie rod adapter. As you can see, it is bump steer adjustable. It's fully threaded. No need for spacers. You got a jam nut top and bottom. They're locking jam nuts. It lets you move your bump up or down, get it set to where you need it to be, and then just lock your jam nuts in place. One other thing I want to note is our tie rod to spindle adapter is a direct bolt onto the factory spindle. You do not have to drill out your spindle. Most of our competitors make you drill this hole out to 5/8 inch, and they just use a 5/8 bolt with a bunch of spacers for the bump steer. This is CNC machine to the GM spindle taper, so it's a direct bolt on. As you can see, we also use safety washers on the rod end. They're 4130 chrome moly safety washers. It gives the rod end some spacing to give it room to articulate. And of course, it's also an additional safety feature. If for some reason the rod end would ever pull through, everything would stay in place. Our rack kit also includes the complete steering shaft. We're using Flaming River chrome moly needle roller bearing U-joints. They're about the highest quality U-joint you can buy, so we're not skimping on quality anywhere here. These U-joints will last the life of your car. You got two U-joints, one where it connects to the rack, and then there's another one up in the center of the shaft. We're using a 3/4 inch DD steering shaft, which is going to give you maximum header clearance. It's very low profile, yet very strong. This rack kit and steering shaft is going to give you about as much header clearance as possible on a 3rd gen. Really opens it up for you. Now on the top end of the shaft, it's drilled. This mounting hardware comes with. That slides right into your factory connection. Just bolted in place. Everything is a direct bolt on. So that's our complete tubular front end setup that we have available. Showed you all the different options we have. If you have any questions on what would be best for your application, feel free to contact us. You can email us tech@spone.net, or give us a call toll free, 1-888-365-6064. Well, what we're going to do now is go out in the shop and we'll show you this complete assembly installed in a vehicle, and you'll be able to see what it looks like with the coilover setup fully mounted and the stock type spring fully mounted. And we'll also show you the manual rack kit in action, with everything connected, so you can see how that works. Okay, we're out here in our R&D shop now. We've taken all those products that we just gave you a product video tour of, and we've installed them in one of our R&D jig cars, 84 Firebird that we use. You can see that here on the lift. As I said, this is just a jig car, so don't expect any fancy engine bay or anything like that. So we've got our tubular K-member installed. All these parts are the same ones that we just showed you in the video tour. Came out here and installed them. We got our tubular K-member with the Pinto manual rack mounts. As you can see, we have the Pinto manual rack installed. We'll start over here on the driver's side. The driver's side, we have the Coilover Setup. So we have our Coilover version A arm installed. No spring pockets. As you remember from our product tour, we show all the different mounting ends. We've got a dowel sphere there. We've got a spherical rod end there. Passenger side is a stock spring setup. That's where we're showing you the Delrin bushing and the polyurethane bushing. Let's come over here and give you a side view. I got a jack in place here just to kind of show you what it's all going to look like at ride height. We have a 90-10 strut on this car. And as you can see, the coilover kit is installed over the 90-10 strut. I'll zoom in here, you can see the 1/4-inch reinforcement plate on the underside of the strut tower, as well as the supplied upper strut mount retainer. Coilover spring goes all the way up through there and mounts on the underside of the fabricated spherical upper strut mounts on the top side of the engine bay. That gives you way more strut travel than what you're ever going to need. Also allows us to use a longer spring. So you have, for the Pro Drag application, which is what we have here, it's a 14-inch long spring, which gives you a lot more stored energy. Give you that weight transfer snap when you launch a car. Our Pro Tour setup would be the exact same setup. We just use a 12-inch spring that allows you to lower the car. It varies anywhere from 2 to 3 inches and still have plenty of strut travel. Come down here, you can see our bump steer kit. We got our 4140 chromoly tie rod adjuster, the 5/8 chromoly rod end, and our 4140 chromoly spindle adapters. As you can see, direct bolt on. That's a factory spindle, it's just powder coated black. And it connects right on there just like your factory outer tie rod end. You can see with the chromoly safety washers, the rod end has plenty of room to articulate and do its job. That's your end link mounting tab for your sway bar end link. So that shows you the coilover setup installed on the car. We'll go over to the passenger side and I'll show you the stock style spring setup. Alright, this side here we have set up for a factory style spring. We got our tubular A-arms with spring boxes. We do not have a spring installed in this car. We're doing some other work. We have the spring out to make it easier for what we're working on at the moment, but you can see that's your upper spring seat on the K-member. And your spring will go down and mount in the spring box on the tubular A-arm. Again, we have a 90-10 strut on this side. We do have our fabricated upper strut mounts installed on this side also. That's the upper strut mount retainer you see in there. Same as the other side, bump steer kit, connects a rack to the factory spindle. As you can see, with the rack in place, you still have plenty of clearance with your engine, etc. We have it located so that you won't have any interference problems. You can see the steering shaft where it connects to the Pinto rack. Goes up into the engine bay. That's your U-joint, about halfway up. And then the rest of the way it just travels up to the factory location and bolts in place, just like your factory steering shaft did. As you can see, the steering shaft is very low profile, using Flaming River, low profile chromoly needle bearing U-joints, and a 3/4 double D steering shaft. Gives you a lot of room to get headers and turbo piping, etc. in the engine bay. This is a factory LG4, so of course it looks like a mess, but you get the idea. If it clears that factory mess, it will probably clear anything. You can see the motor mount pads. That's what I'm showing you here. Factory motor mount bushings bolt. It's got a U-bracket bolted to the block. Bushing bolts to the K-member. U-bracket slides right over the bushing and you just put your bolt right through there. As we explained earlier in the video, unless you're running a motor plate, now you can see why you need the motor mount pads. That's what your block mounted motor mounts bolt to on the K-member. Same thing here on the passenger side. Just come underneath, give you a different angle of view. Passenger side, stock spring setup. Driver's side, you got the coilover setup. So that concludes our video tour of our 82 to 92 F-body Camaro and Firebird tubular K-member setups, various tubular A-arm setups, our coilover setup, and our Pinto manual rack and pinion steering setup. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. You can give us a call, shoot us an email, tech@spone.net. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks for watching our video. I'm Steve Spone, and I'll see you at the track.